services, supplies at 115, 116,000. Those have not been ordered yet, correct?
So where, oh, hang on, let me go back up.
No, it's the page you're showing us right now. It's on the bottom.
Oh, sorry.
It says,
no, I don't think so. I'll have to look with, that may be the nurse, might be part of the nurse's salary. I'm not positive. I'll have to check that with Andrea.
yeah, it says supplies. So I know at one time, Karen, you mentioned to me that there were a bunch of supplies submitted by the nurses.
Right, but they didn't come to that amount. I have that on another sheet. You'll see that that doesn't
okay. Okay, so we'll have to take a look at that because that seems incredibly high.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just wondering if it includes like the masks and the different supplies we did for that wasn't necessarily, that fell under PPE.
The nurse's salary was just under, the nurse's supplies total were just under 6,000.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if this includes some of the other supplies. I'll have to check with Andrea.
Okay.
Okay, so then here's the lunch service. These are a bunch of those warming, the warming units that we got for the different schools. This is the cooling. These are the coolers that will go for delivering to homes. The ice packs. This is the stuff Terry put in, all of the items for technology.
So Karen, did you just get this report today?
Yes.
Okay,
well,
so I didn't see it.
I have not actually analyzed all of this. I
understand. The problem that I have is I'm going to be responsible for the application and I haven't seen it. I didn't receive it. And I have a number of questions that I'm not sure this meeting is the right venue for the budget, but I didn't receive it.
So we'll make sure that you receive a copy of that, Denise. Andrea's today working with the auditor and she probably wasn't thinking. So she sent it off to Karen in anticipation for the meeting and forgot to CC you. So we'll make sure you get a copy of that.
And I
was going to try to do the application in the morning, and I do have questions that I have of this team, so I don't know where you want to put that.
Denise, can we check in after the meeting is over tonight?
We can. I just am getting concerned that I'm the one that was responsible for the application, but I really am not going to have the information that I need for the morning. Yeah.
So Denise, the last meeting we had, I went through everything that had been ordered already. I had shared that too at the board meeting. So you'll know pretty much all of the things that we've already approved through this. And I'm going to share what some of the other things that have come up since our last meeting. That's my next thing to share.
I did have a very succinct list of what I went through all the documentation for the resource team. And I had some very succinct questions, perhaps they'll be answered, but I did have outstanding questions.
Okay. So then this is the end of technology. This is the grand total that was spent as of last Wednesday. We have expended $188,568.85 with a balance of $1,227,219.68. And this again is as of last Wednesday. We asked as many requisitions could be done that were approved. Okay, and then any questions on that part? I mean, the hard part is I'm not going to know what every itemized item is in this. These are all things that Andrea has put numbers to. I can go in and try to match those for you, Denise.
So some of what this is if you see the N codes, those are codes per building, per class, each building has a different code. And so Terry may have ordered a certain amount and then they got coded out per building based on how many units per building. So that's the discrepancy. We have a total allocation that we've planned for that comes from the technology spreadsheet. And then Andrea is responsible for then dispersing those based on how they show up in each building and coding them per building. And so that's why it looks different. Denise isn't going to be responsible for that level of coding. And the one that I am curious about, I'm sure Andrea could speak to, so maybe next week, is that health services, that 115,000. That's the one I'm sure there's a reason for it in that space. I'm just can't recall what that is.
I do have a question, Karen. If you look at the technology section, it totals, what is it, 167, almost 168,000. So we approved a purchase of needs for the technology department that was about 400,000. It was 394,000. Is the 167.9 that's already in here, is that part of the 394? Or is that entirely separate and different from the 394 that we approved?
So I believe that it's part of it. Terry put this, these are what Terry put in.
Okay.
Terry's on. So Terry, do you want to answer that question? I mean, these are the requisitions you put in, correct?
She's transitioning. She's trying to manage the live streaming at the same time. We're having audio issues.
So I am not the one who did all the requisitions. So other people did the requisitions who were in charge of those different committees, because I didn't have time to put the requisitions in. So Andrea was collecting those through Amanda, and they were just doing the ordering. So I can't tell you which ones are which.
Okay.
Terry,
So,
Well,
can you speak to what you ordered, what's showing up on the CRF spreadsheet? So look ahead on this one.
and so we don't need to get into specifics. I mean, that's totally okay. I'm just wondering, if we approved 394,000, then we're missing some items here on this particular spreadsheet. And I just didn't know if that was above and beyond what is already identified. Yeah, looking at the other fund that Karen just showed, no, there's no money taken out of there, nor should there be any money taken out of there, because that money's being set aside to help cover for any staffing issues that we need from December 31st to the rest of the school year. With $397,000, it's going to go pretty quickly. Okay.
Okay, let me go slower. Let me go slower. Hang on. All right, somebody go. Oh, there it is. It is. Yep.
That's for the total of everything, not just technology. So I don't want to spend our time doing all of that. It's just I noticed the discrepancy, and if that's something that we can look at, please, and find out where that is, because if it's not taken into account and we're already down to 1.2 and we haven't looked at ventilation yet, we're eating through the money very quickly, which we knew we would, but okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
Nope, I'm glad you asked the questions. I really have not, I just figured that this spreadsheet that Andrea would give enough information, but if you would like me to go into it, I can.
Yeah, so you need the detailed summary rather than the
Right.
budget summary that you got here. That will help you cross-reference. And then finding out the health supplies at 115,000. And it looks like just not all the technology has been processed. Like Terry may have pushed it through, but it hasn't gone through the whole system yet.
Okay.
So I would just like to put out to the group, and just for your information, Karen, the application doesn't look too difficult in terms of completing that, but they have, there's a very specific template that has to be completed. And I just feel at this juncture, I can't do it in isolation. I have questions and I don't have the information, and even this group can't answer all the questions. So I just, Pat, I'm looking to you to how to proceed from here. I really was hoping to wrap that up tomorrow, and I just don't know how I can get everything.
So
Fine.
you and I can talk tomorrow, and we can wrap Karen in, and wrap in Andrea as much as she's available. If we're not able to do it tomorrow, given everyone's schedule, as long as it's in this week, we'll be able to get it done Wednesday or Thursday.
And if I could at least get the document to review, and I to do that.
Sure. Yep,
I'm
we'll
having
do that
difficulty.
behind the scenes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have the spreadsheet of resources that people are still looking to have purchased. Can I go through that at this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the first one is flexible seating options. Some of the schools are removing their desks in order to have the 3 feet distancing. So Pittston School is asking for some padded floor cushions, 33, and these are for kindergarten and first grade, and for a sum of $357. Also looking for sit spots for both Pittston and Helen Thompson School. These are like Velcro spots that actually go on a rug. It's really easy for custodians to vacuum over, and it's going to be able to help label the floor so that students will see where to stand for their 6 feet of distancing instead of putting tape all over the floor. A lot of our schools are using these now because they're really carpet friendly. So we're looking to move that to this committee for approval.
So what's the grand total?
Well, they're different for each thing. So for the padded floor cushions, it's $357. The sit spots for Pittston would be $94.95. And then the sit spots for Helen Thompson would be $189.90.
Okay. Any concerns? Thank you, Angela. It's 6:42. Any concerns with those?
This is not in lieu of desks. This is in addition to.
No, this will be in lieu of desks at that age.
I'm just going to put forth. I just don't know long term. Is that to not be able to sit at a desk? How difficult is it for the early kindergarten to not be able to do schoolwork and write at a desk when they're in school? And I'm just simply asking.
So a lot of the classrooms are using the plastic tabletops. We're doing that a lot in our kindergartens here at LER. But they're not going to have to sit on the floor all day. We also have some tables, but it's to allow them to be able to have their own spot on the floor as well, so that they can do some of their centers and their activities. If we try to do a desk for kindergarten, it's just really not age appropriate to put kindergartners in individual desks. So that was the plan for that. And because Pittston has hard floors, they don't have carpeting on all their floors. That's why they wanted the floor cushions.
Molly?
Are the desks able to be used in a different school? I know we were ordering desks, weren't we? Are they the wrong size to be used in a different school, or can they be shared that way?
So desks were bought for all of the classrooms that needed them, but we're not getting desks for for kindergarten classrooms. Nor are we doing.
I understand, but if you have them for kindergarten, can they be used elsewhere rather than, or were the desks already ordered and purchased?
So we didn't have any desks in kindergarten before. So we only.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Yeah, they were in storage. Most of our classes, even all the way through second grade, we removed most of the desks for tables. So now we're bringing those out of storage and putting them back into classrooms. And we have enough at my school, and then some of the other schools have had to order desks. But they're supposed to
Oh.
be the week of Labor Day.
But we are sharing desks and other equipment across the district. So if one school has extra, we are certainly sharing it elsewhere.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So any opposition to the purchase of the flexible seats? Because these will be used at the end of the pandemic, correct, Karen?
They can be. Yep.
Yeah. All right. I see some thumbs up. Is everyone okay with it? All right. Great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. Karen?
Okay.
You're all set.
The next one is art supplies. So the art teachers are looking to do more individual packets for each classroom so that the kids don't have to share and that the art teacher isn't having to wash everything. So this is from the Helen Thompson and Pittston art teacher. The other art teacher is also putting in similar. She didn't give me the number and the amount yet, but it's going to be similar to this one from this art teacher. So it's just allowing the kids to have their own watercolors and their own Sharpies so that the art teacher doesn't have to share them with the students. So her total is $607.64.
And Karen, this is above and beyond the supplies that they've already purchased that were in the regular budget?
It is. Because
Okay.
originally they would have shared these when they came to an art class. They would have just had them in a bucket and the kids would have shared them. But now because they're going to individual classrooms and they're going from one classroom to another, so it's not going to be like the cohort A and cohort B. They'll have 5 classrooms and they really don't want to have to try to wash everything from one classroom to another because that would be really difficult to do.
Right. All right. Is everyone in support or any questions, concerns? Okay, if we're in support, thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm just looking for the next one. Hang on.
Can you just address, Karen? We talked the other day and we had talked last meeting about ordering picnic tables. We talked about ordering tents and we're no longer doing that. That's not the plan.
That's correct. So I did talk to all of the principals and we really decided that we really don't need, because we're starting in yellow anyway, that we really don't need the outside coverings as significantly as we thought. So the next idea that was brought out was using some shade coverings. And still most of the elementary schools felt like we could get away from not using that because we still can use our gym and we do have some shaded outside spaces. But the middle school and high school still wanted some because they don't have as much shade at their schools. So Chad and John are getting some of these parachute umbrella kind of things that will be attached over their tables that they have in their spaces. We also decided not to do picnic tables because you can only fit 2 students at a table 6 feet apart. And if they're taking their masks off outside, they have to be 6 feet apart. We didn't think that was fiscally responsible. And we already have a lot of white tables in our school district already. So we're going to be using those tables instead. So that's saving us money as well.
So Karen, there are no tents whatsoever because I thought there was one remaining.
We have one tent that's going to be ordered for Pittston Elementary School.
That's what I thought. And what is the price on that one?
It was it's up here. It was 16. I think it was something like $1,700 to start, and then $1,600 a month afterwards, and that's just through the month of November.
Okay.
So Pittston's the only one. And the reason why Pittston is getting theirs is because they don't have a separate cafeteria and gym, so it will make it very difficult.
That's what I thought.
For lunch and phys ed. Okay, the next one, our box fans. We have in that we were going to be giving classrooms box fans. So we called around to the different schools. We need 41 fans at the elementary schools for a sum of $733.08. And then at the middle school and high school, they need 74 fans, and that's for a sum of $1,506.64. And that's to blow the air out of a classroom, not necessarily to just move air. It's to help ventilate that air out of the classrooms.
Karen,
Yes.
can you tell me why there is a difference in the cost per fan from the elementary box fan to the high school and middle school box fan?
So I have a feeling that, so the 1788 was what was coming from Walmart. And I really couldn't tell you the reason here, because I thought they were all 1788. So I really didn't notice this until right now. So I would have to look into that.
I can speak to that. So this is the reason for it. At the high school and the middle school, they're not the big square box fans. They're the window size fans that have 2 small fans in them, because the windows won't accommodate a big box fan at those schools. So to fit the fans in the awning windows like at the high school, we needed a different kind of fan. So it is a little bit more money for those type fans.
Gotcha.
Gabe,
Thank you.
Gabe, did you take into account? I can't talk. That T wing has a different type of window than the rest of the rest of the high school.
Yeah, so those are still the same kind of awning sort of windows.
Yeah, casement type window.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hard to get some fans in parts of the building, no matter what. But your part of the building has the heat pumps in it.
Yeah.
So in that portion of the building, it's going to be much cooler, where the other parts are potentially could get warmer. So that's why we really looked at the C-wing section of it. But there is a potential they would work in your type windows also, and the box fan won't work well.
You and I have chatted about the fact that opening the windows still is going to help the flow of air and that ventilation, which is what the fans are all about. So,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm looking for an approval for the box fans. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to get all these because there's so many.
Can I ask a quick question first? I'm wondering if the fans are, I mean, I'm all about keeping it a little bit cooler because I'm really worried about the heat if we have hot days, but I'm wondering about the noise level of a fan, and with teachers wearing masks and kids wearing masks, are they can you get as quiet of fans as you can get? I don't know if they come in quiet mode or not, but some of them are pretty loud.
It's probably how fast you put the speed level too, because sometimes the faster you put the speed, the louder the fan gets. But we didn't price for how loud the fans were. We just tried to get the best price. And the 1788, like I said, is from Walmart.
Molly?
So are these for, in addition to increasing the ventilation? Is that what I understand? Or is it for temperature control?
It's for ventilation. It's what I was told was it was going to pull the air more out of the classroom out to the outside, not pulling the air in. That's what I was told.
And we need it in addition to the ventilation improvements, or?
That's what the recommendations were.
Yeah, it's part of the recommendations, but Molly, I also do think at the beginning of the school year and then at the end of the school year, it gets really, really hot in those classrooms. And so we have ceiling fans in most of the classrooms. And by running those ceiling fans and then having a window fan, it will also help pull some of that heat out of the classroom.
I would also make a special note here, Molly, in terms of just general ventilation, but also from an infection control perspective. Typically I know one of the principals said for the lockdown, the doors are typically shut. But in this case, when we open school in the fall, we may want to purposely have the doors open for this ventilation piece. And so the students aren't continually touching the door too. So it's really does help with the ventilation, and that space is not so tight, the air.
Okay, so anything else on the fans? I want to keep this moving along here. If you're in support of the fans, please thumbs up. Okay, Karen, thank you.
So the next one is speech articulation sessions. They're asking for the clear masks. These are the reusable ones for the staff at the middle school and high school students. 4 boxes of 50 each for the adult, which is $375 per box from Raffia Nova. And that would be a sum of $1,500. And the bottom one, reusable clear masks for the elementary students, 18 kits for elementary plus 2 extra adult masks to go toward needs at the middle school and high school. It's $100, $120 per kit for a sum of $2,160. And this is coming from the special ed department.
And Sarah had spoke to me about this, Sarah and Alicia. My one question, Karen, with the PPE supplies that we're getting from the Department of Education, weren't some of these masks on that list that we were supposed to receive?
I don't believe we were, they were, I think they were back ordered, Pat. I don't remember seeing that we
Okay.
were getting any from the Department of Education yet. That's why we were looking to get more, because we were concerned that we weren't going to get any.
Okay. All
And
right.
that is the recommended practice for this purpose.
Yeah, I mean, for these students, we absolutely need to have these clear masks. So I say that this is an absolute must. If anyone has any concerns, but please let us know. But I think we absolutely need to do it. Okay.
Okay.
Good, Karen. I
Thank
didn't
you.
see any opposition.
The next one is the list that the nurses met, and they came up with a list of needs. So right now, Pat had said it was okay to order some things on here, but we haven't ordered them yet because it was too late for me to do it last Wednesday. So some of the supplies, however, are like recovery couches, room dividers, porta walls. So I reached out to the elementary principals and John and Chad to ask them to measure their room spaces to see if it can accommodate all of this furniture for those isolation rooms. And then some of the things like a utility cart, we have carts like that could hold their supplies already in our buildings. And we already have some, like in my isolation room, I have 2 room dividers in there. So just trying to find out, do we have some of these things already in our school, and can those spaces accommodate what they're asking for? So we were really going to look into that more. I am hoping that we could possibly go ahead and order some of the medical supplies, like the stethoscopes and the cuffs and the oximeters.
Yeah, I did meet with the nurses today, and I did explain those that you wanted to explore it a little bit more. I do think it's important for the committee to know that the flow in the regular nurses area is going to look different. It's going to be one individual at a time, and then disinfecting, and then another individual coming in. And then the separate isolation room, we don't know what the volume would be. So I would anticipate the couch that you have in the regular nurses area might actually be better put into the isolation room. It does need to be disinfected. We don't know how many people, and we don't want students who have potential COVID symptoms staying. We want them, home as soon as possible. So I understand your rationale for maybe holding off on the couch. I would encourage the pulse oximetry is a student who's in trouble or a teacher who's in trouble. It really can tell us the oxygen level. So I do encourage us perhaps the pulse oximetry. If you want to hold off on the room dividers, if we don't have couches in there, then we're going to be having chairs in there for the students. And is that what we want in the isolation rooms? We also, just based on some of the location of the isolation rooms, we need to have additional staff who are monitoring those students with a checklist. So in reality, what that would look like is chairs in there, a student and a staff member with a checklist monitoring until parent, guardian could come pick them up. So I do encourage us to, if the other things listed there, those certainly not the larger items, if you want to hold off on the dividers, the carts and couches, but to go ahead and purchase the others.
Yeah, Karen and I had spoken about that last week. I am in support of moving forward with the medical supplies. I'm not supportive right now of moving forward with a utility cart, with the couches, room dividers. I'm just not. I'm really concerned about the availability of how much money we're going to have at the end of this. And as Denise talks about needing to have staff to help oversee this room. We need staff in a lot of ways, and we're eating through a lot of this money really quickly with the supplies. They're absolutely essential. But in this particular case, if there are items that we can take from other places, if we can use chairs instead of couches, I really think that we have to consider doing so. Mary?
Yeah, so the total you have of 59.92, is that without those things Pat's talking about? Because
No,
when I
it
add up all of
no,
those
it
things, it
includes
comes
all
over
of
to over $10,000.
It's all of it. I
So
believe-
it's all of it, because when I add it up, it comes over,
Yeah,
it
no,
comes out to about 10,000, not 59.92.
I'm just looking. No, you're right. Position 3, yeah, it's gotta be closer to that.
So there's a
I was not-
discrepancy
I
there.
didn't- Yeah. These came over from a spreadsheet that we were using from the resource committee. So I don't think this price it's not right.
So what I'm looking at is the fingertip pulse oximeter, the legacy Sprague stethoscope, the latex-free cuff and bladder, the disposable stethoscope. That's what
I will
I'm
tell you, the
seeing.
nurses did decide today they would not order the disposable stethoscopes. You can't hear very well, and you can disinfect the regular stethoscope. So that can be, it's a small item, but it can be taken off.
Okay, great. Thank
Okay.
you for that. So that's what I see. So are we in support of those items? Great, thank you.
And I think that is it.
Okay. And I wonder, as we go through this every single week, I just wonder with some of these smaller purchases, if maybe as a group, we want to give Karen and her committee with maybe my oversight, maybe with Denise's oversight, and Angela some authority to push some of these smaller items through so that you're not looking at purchases for $100, that's something that we can take care of internally, and that you're only looking at the really big issues, the big items, things over $1,000 or something. Does that make sense? I see a lot of thumbs up. Yeah. So, all right. So if no one objects to that, then Karen, this point forward, anything smaller than 1,000, we'll just figure out internally, and it's just the larger items that we'll bring to the committee. Okay.
So with that said, I have another just question for the committee as well. So teachers have been buying things individually for their classrooms during the summer to like some yoga mats. They've already bought some yoga mats. I haven't had to buy them as much. What are you going to do about teachers who submit reimbursements for some things that they have purchased so that they can make individual learning centers or materials for their kids?
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that behind the scenes, I guess, Karen. Generally, teachers are not supposed to be purchasing items without getting pre-approval from the district. And so if they're purchasing things on their own without getting pre-approval, there's no guarantee that we will reimburse.
Okay.
And we may have to apply the same here. Again, I'm really nervous that we're not going to have enough funding to cover everything that we need to be able to bring students and staff back safely. And at one time, we had heard that there was a chance of getting some additional federal funds, but I'm not sure that that's going to happen. We know that the Senate and the House, they've left Washington until September. So I'm not certain that there will be another batch of money coming. So we have to plan on living within just the existing money that we have. And I'd love to be able to reimburse them, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure, so we'll have to wait and see where things fall.
Okay.
And I would remind teachers and all staff members, you need to put a request in advance, and you need to get it approved, and only then are we able to reimburse for expenses or guarantee reimbursement for expenses. Angela?
So just for clarity, we do have a few requests that I've been holding on to as we go through this process that are not for individual teacher expenses, but because we lost a set of instructional materials in the spring training that we may need to replenish those. They fall in the under $500 category, and they are like core instructional materials that we use at certain grade levels. Like they just did not return, but I think that falls under this process of, with your oversight and Karen's, I can now move those forward, and Denise, you and Karen can review those requests and see if we can move forward in securing those resources for their curriculum.
And let's talk about that, Angela. My first question to you is, why should they come out of these funds? These should really come out of our budget, our regular budget. So
it was because of the March to June issue, and we didn't know that until June, and the budget had already passed.
Right. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, Molly?
I was just looking for an update. I don't remember if it was ever confirmed last week. Did we make a decision on the chorus masks or the athletic masks?
The chorus masks were tabled, and then since that date, we received new guidance from the Maine Department of Education that sets us in a position to not make that request any longer for now. And so until the guidance changes, we no longer need to make those requests.
For either one?
I don't know about athletics.
Just
I'm only speaking about the specialized chorus masks.
Okay.
And I don't believe that we have ordered any for athletics. We are expecting Maine Principals Association to come out this week and give a little more guidance on high school and middle school athletics. And so didn't want to spend the money until we knew for certain what their guidance was going to be. So hopefully we will hear soon. Nate, do you have any update on that? Nate,
no, there's still no update at this time. We're hoping to have something by the end of the week.
The end of the week?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me? By the end of the week.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I had heard earlier in the week, so I'm disappointing it's going to take all week, but.
And Pat, was there any further guidance on
just one second, please. Nate, go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
Of course, there are a lot of rumors circulating at this point in time. But the last thing I heard was hopefully there'll be an announcement on Thursday.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Nate. Denise?
I just had a number of questions from principals and teachers regarding music, and I didn't know if there was any further guidance. Right now, if you're not using masks, they're recommending that you not do the music inside even. You know, for example, in the elementary schools, if you use masks, then you have to have the 6 feet. So I didn't know, what did they clarify at all, or was there anything further on?
It was, Denise, that was specific to singing, not general.
Yeah, and I'm speaking about singing as well.
But there's a distinction between general music instruction and singing, and so I want to be sure our public understands that we can hold general music instruction and adjust our curriculum and still follow the singing guidelines. And as of today, at 2 o'clock, David Walker and I met and adjusted all of the parameters to follow the Maine Department of Education guidelines called COVID Performing Arts, of which the principals have access to that. And as does the entire performing arts team. So we can certainly adjust our practices to meet the Maine Department of Ed guidelines.
Interior with the Department of Ed guidelines, you can have music instruction inside.
And still follow the guidelines that they've set.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Karen, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, Karen, thank you very much. Gabe, facilities and then transportation.
All right, so I do have some, which I don't know if you want to go over that right now, but I just received some pricing for the ventilation information. So if that's something you want to go over now, or you just want me to give you an update on my facilities committee.
Gosh, my heart is stopping. I don't know.
I'm
If you
sorry.
have it, yeah, this will be news to me too.
Okay, yeah.
We need to have it. Can you give
Yep.
me give us a ballpark?
Absolutely. So I don't have the proposals in hand, but he sent me an email to give us a good idea. I'll have the proposals for the O2 Prime tomorrow, and hopefully by Thursday I will have the isolation room proposals in hand. So the isolation room. So this is for the ventilation for each of the holding rooms to give them a negative pressure, basically. So the estimate that they have, 18,000 per room. So there is 6 schools, so that brings us up to just over $100,000 to do those isolation rooms for the ventilation in just those rooms. For the O2 Prime system, they did break it out per school, but the total cost, if we were to do the whole district, including the central office, would be approximately $105,000. I mean, sorry, $605,000. So would you like me? I can break it down per school if you would like.
No, not for today.
It's a good chunk of money. And again, this is the O2 Prime, which is the bipolar ionization system that they would put into the ventilation ducts or put into the heat ventilators that are in each room. And they shared a paper copy, but I can share with everybody kind of the science behind it that they have, and it is proven technology. This has been out there for quite a long time in Europe and is making its way over here.
So at one time, Gabe, you were talking about the flow of air into the classrooms and that's what made a difference. And that we've spent a lot of money on our ventilation systems here. We just had them completely reworked 3 years ago. And thought that some tweaking, some modifying of that ventilation system would probably meet most of our needs. Is that not the sense that they're telling you now?
That's not the case. They feel that our buildings, with going through the ventilation system, we can ventilate at or above the requirements needed. The O2 Prime would be something that would be over and above what we would be required to really have. The O2 Prime system helps not just with what we're dealing with right now, but it'll help in the future with cold season, with flu season, with everything moving forward. Basically, it gives the particles a charge. So basically, it encapsulates any virus, bacteria that's in the air. So that's where it helps. It kills the viruses before it actually gets onto any of the surface in the classrooms. So it's not just a immediate solution, it's a long-term solution to what we constantly deal with in our schools, which is when it gets cold, we really are hit hard with cold flu season. As I'm worried that's what we might face with, coming into this fall.
So, Gabe, you and I need to sit down and have a conversation about funding sources.
Yep.
And looking at the regular budget to see if there are modifications and adjustments that you can make based on this.
Yep.
Rather than looking to the CRF fund to cover the entire $705,000. So let's have that conversation, see what we can do.
Absolutely.
Okay. And yeah, let's do that. And then we can report back to the committee next week.
Yep. No, that's perfect. I know it's a big chunk of money. I know it is, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gabe, this is Dean. Are there out year costs in terms of maintenance on that system once it's installed?
Yeah, so the maintenance on the system's very minimal. It's not something that we would have to touch year after year. The system itself, the majority of the cost is the hardware that they're installing. It's pretty simplistic in the way it really works. It does take a little low voltage power to run these units. They're basically mounted in the ductwork or in the coils of the unit that's there, and it puts out an electric charge to the air that's being blown through. So really, if there was anything that would need to be done in the future, it's kind of just basically you're swapping the unit out with a new one. Yep.
Mary?
Yeah, Mary, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, Gabe. So if we said yes to a portion of this or any of it, how long will it take for them to do like the isolation rooms and then the O2 prime?
Yeah, so they said it's a first come first serve. So as soon as we get the proposal, we would be put on the schedule list. They could not give me a time for any of the work. It is not work that's going to be done for the start of school.
And I think that's a really important distinction for the negative pressure. That's a requirement of ours, but for sustainability, we're not going, if I understand it correctly, long term, we wouldn't be using those rooms for this purpose. Am I correct?
Right. The isolation rooms is for this exact time frame that we're living in right now.
So we're spending
I'm hoping we wouldn't need
$18,000
those.
per room, and no guarantee of when it will be done, and it won't be used long term, but we're required to do it.
Right, we're required to
Yeah.
have those kind of holding rooms. And we need to make sure that those rooms are not ventilating into the rest of the building.
Yeah.
So that's the negative pressure piece
Yeah.
that we would really need. And talking to Siemens, this is exactly what most all school districts are doing.
Yeah.
They're putting these rooms in that are these negative pressure rooms.
Molly?
Am I hearing you say that our ventilation system is sufficient as is, aside from the isolation rooms?
Right, so they're supposed to be starting this week to go through to do the verification of everything. But they feel, knowing the systems that we have, that we do have the proper ventilation in the buildings. But we are going through with the verification of it through Siemens to make sure that all the dampers are working properly, that we're able to run all the units as they're meant to be run and do all the verifications. So after the verifications, they may find that there are some units that need a repair or some dampers that need repair. So that's something that we would have to do once they've done the verification and survey of our ventilation system.
And that cost has not been calculated yet. That's
Nope.
not included in the 700,000.
Right, I do not have a cost there.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're not scheduled to have those repairs if needed?
I wouldn't know that we needed those repairs until we do the survey.
Right, but the timing, it would fall under the same kind of scheduling.
Yeah, I would have to try to see if we can get them either repaired through Siemens quickly, or even through my electrician that I have that's already been doing some side work for me for the other ventilation pieces. We would try to get them done as soon as possible.
Mary?
So my suggestion would be we look at okaying the isolation room, so we get on their list and get that done as soon as possible, and then let Gabe and Pat work out the rest. And even when you look at schools, I know the C-wing part of the high school has a much older ventilation system than the T-wing part. So maybe depending on money, we look at maybe prioritizing if we decide to do the prime O2 or the O2 prime.
Yeah, and Mary, that's why I made sure it was broken down per school, and we can actually, they've broken it down even more than that. They pinpointed a cost basically per unit. So we can pinpoint certain areas if we didn't do a part of the school, and just kind of pinpointed the areas that really need the help. And I think that's where the survey with the ventilation system, once they're completed that, they feel it's going to take about 8 to 10 days to do that process. And once we have that information, I think really we can use that to pinpoint what we need to really look at.
I agree with Mary. Since we need to be put on a list, I think we need to prioritize the isolation rooms and get those moving forward. So that's about $100,000. It's a lot of money, but I think it's absolutely essential. We're going to have to use those spaces. It's not for long term, but we don't know for how long. But it needs to be done. Is anyone in opposition to us moving forward with that expense? Okay, then Gabe, will you call them tomorrow and get the ball rolling on that one? Okay,
Yep.
great.
All set, definitely.
All right, what about transportation, or do you have more for facilities?
Really, I can just go over really quickly the rest of the facilities. We met on Thursday and just trying to run through what our needs, or we feel that our needs are going to be during especially those deep cleaning days, and if there was going to be any other additional staff that might be necessary. I know there's a good list of ed techs and other staff that are willing to help out, that Amanda has, and she just shared with that list today, which I need to go through it. I feel, and everybody on the committee really feels that the staff members that are helping on the certain days, that their focus really just needs to be on the disinfecting portion of it. That way, that's their focus, and they have their task, their one task to do. And that way, my staff can go through and really focus on the cleaning that they normally would be doing. So that's kind of one piece. They really, elementary wise, I think we could probably do with just a couple hours of a additional staff member for most of the days. But on Wednesday, I think we'll definitely need an additional staff member, on that Wednesday to help out to do the deep cleaning for sure.
So Gabe, on Wednesday, we have an administrative team meeting, and on that agenda is to discuss Wednesdays and the staffing needs. So we'll talk about it there, okay?
Yep,
Denise?
that's perfect.
I just had Gabe, could you comment on the drinking fountains? Will they be converted over? It's just such a source of contact, and I don't want students to be tempted by it. It's important to have hydration, of course, but are we converting those to water fill stations, and what does that look like?
Yep. So the high school does have, I believe there's 3 of the units at the high school that are bottle fills.
Okay.
And at least 2 at the middle school. I have on order, which they should be in this week, 2 bottle fill stations for each of the elementary schools.
And so that water fountain in the room, will that be turned off, or what does that look like?
Right. So the water fountains that are in the classrooms, I feel will not be able to be used. That we can try to turn them off from below, but we might just have to cap them and cover them from the top. That's going to be hard. They're really not isolated in the piping below the sink areas.
Okay, so I think that's just an important education piece for the teachers. And I know there's a concern if you turn off water, the Legionnaire's disease and water sitting. So I just didn't want that to be a problem for us too in any of the locations. But it sounds like you're not going to turn the water off.
Yeah, no,
okay.
the water will be still on
Okay.
in those areas.
Mary?
So Gabe, the bottle fill station, the one out by the library and the guidance office, also has a water where somebody could drink out of it. Can you shut that part off and have just the water fill piece on?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
The new units we can turn off.
Okay.
That's an important piece. That's another reason why these new units work for us, is because we are able to turn off the fountain portion, but still keep the bottle fill portion on.
And so the high school ones are new units, they just were put in before?
Yep. So they're new units. They've been put in the last couple of years, and the one by the library is a brand new one this year.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
I think upstairs where I am, we have old just regular water faucets.
Right. I think down at that end, there's still just an old water unit.
Yeah.
So we can still see if we can get the other ones changed out. I was only able to get my hands on 8 of them, and that's all I could do. They're going out of stock as fast as they get them in. So
Well, we could shut the fountains off and they could fill up. We have lots of water faucets in the science department, so they could fill their water bottles up there.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think it really needs to be stressed. If they have their own water bottles, they fill them up. Even if they brought them from home, that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, it's
All right.
great that you were able to
So-
get those, Gabe. Do you expect that they're going to get here before school starts?
That's my plan. They should be in this week, and we will start installing those as soon as I know they're in. Yep.
Oh, anything else, Gabe, on facilities?
No, I think that's it for facilities. If we can talk about the staffing on Wednesday, that's perfect.
Okay.
Transportation, we did finally get some information, which I don't know if it really helped us out or if it just kind of, we throw our hands up in the air sort of with the transportation information that they sent us for the kind of guidelines. It's really, what they sent us for information doesn't say we can't put a divider. It doesn't say we can't put things in, but more like it just says we should seek legal counsel, and we're liable, basically. Speaking to the drivers and other directors, and Charles has been in the Maine Pupil Transportation Association meetings. Most of the directors are not doing any sort of divider or curtain around the drivers. Their drivers have to wear a mask anyway. Most of them are also offering them to wear a face shield. And due to that, they're not using any other barrier around the drivers that they have. So this at least frees up the driver to be able to get out of that area quickly if they need to. We still have to maintain 6 feet of space between the driver and the students. So that does mean that seat right behind the driver is not going to be accessible to anybody to use. We can, kind of reading through the guidelines, if we put 1 student per seat, it does maintain 3 feet of distance from the students. So it would be a staggered pattern, 1 student per seat on the bus that's there. As far as the hand sanitizer, as soon as you enter the bus, directly to the left of the door, kind of where the handrail is on the buses, would be where the hand sanitizer dispenser would be located. Their guidance is basically, as long as it is away from any ignition source, they're fine with it. They're not going to say we can't have it. And as long as it's not a trip hazard, a hazard that any student's going to hit their head on, and in that location, it's no hazard to anybody. So it's the safest place we could have it, and it's accessible as soon as any student or staff member would get onto the bus.
And Gabe, I believe they also said it would be acceptable for family members to sit in the same seat together. Is that something you believe is viable?
Well, the only problem I can see with that is I'm worried they're going to be too close to the student that'd be sitting adjacent to them in the other seats. So, because if they're sitting, if the student is supposed to be sitting next to the window, and now there's a student sitting in the middle or the aisle sort of seat position, it's going to put them closer than 3 feet from the surrounding students in the other seats because of the staggered positions that would be on the bus.
Okay.
That's the problem. So it really, in that respect, it doesn't work. We've looked at it and tried sitting in those areas, and it puts anybody that would sit 2 in a seat closer than 3 feet apart.
Okay.
One thing that the guidance is not saying that they're not giving a capacity to the bus or anything. They're just saying that we have to follow the guidelines, which is 3 to 6 feet with masks. So it puts them within that 3 foot range if they're sitting together in a seat.
So I'm just, will you take a look at the student handbook that we're trying to create? Because it does say in there that families will be allowed to sit together. It
Okay.
also says that prohibited seats will be marked with tape. just make sure that you take a look at that and give me some feedback. I don't want to put misinformation out to families.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do so that way everybody knows where they can sit is any seat or seat section that can be sat in, we're gonna put an X on the back of the seat. So it kind of will really designate, one section in each of the seats that a student can sit in. Yep, and there will definitely have to be seat assignments. So they'll have the seat assignments, which I believe that isn't definitely in handbook. The one other piece for the transportation portion of it, which I think is very important, is each student would only have to be able to have one bus stop assignment. So if they wouldn't be able to go from multiple locations or come from multiple locations during the week, because potentially that puts them on a different bus. And if they have an assignment on one bus and 2 days a week now they're coming on another bus, I have to keep that seating assignment for that child. It doesn't work. It's to me it's unfair, because it's taking a seat off another bus that we would be able to put a child into potentially, or potentially our bus would be overloaded.
Right.
So,
Well, that's certainly something to talk about. And Angela's asking a question.
Yep.
Did you say you'll have an X where they can or they cannot sit?
I was thinking where they cannot sit.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's an X where they cannot sit, so the open seat would not have the X, or seating location in the seat.
Perfect. Thank you. I thought
Yep.
you said just the opposite as well. So.
Yep.
Okay. Now, what this also means is that students won't be able to go home with another student, not on the bus. That's right. They will not. And we're strongly encouraging parents to transport their children when at all possible. So that would be the perfect time for them to transport their child also if they want to bring friends over. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed this conversation, but I was wondering how I was thinking with dividing up who's going back in which cohort groups. Does the buses and the number of kids in the total responses you got to the survey and the ones that are taking the bus versus being dropped off, is that being considered in who's in which cohort group? Just so that on group A, you're not overwhelmed with a ton of kids who are taking the bus, and group B, there's very little.
Right now, we don't know for certain which students are taking the bus or not taking the bus. So transportation is not an immediate consideration. However, families are. And so cohorts are being created based on family units across the district, so that every student who lives in a particular household will attend school and participate in the same cohort. Okay, I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that, but so, okay. And another survey, we'll talk about this in a bit. Another survey is going out to families this week to get a little more definitive information on whether they plan on sending their child back to school or not. And I'm not sure if there's a transportation question on that survey or not. So we'll get to that shortly.
Okay, great.
Good question, Michelle. Molly. No, sorry, I thought I saw your hand raised.
You did. I don't know that I can gather my thoughts well enough to come up with the question. I don't know how are parent pickups at the school going to look, in addition to if there's that much less busing available. I know so many families who a daycare might be a pickup spot and a home might be a drop-off spot. And are you saying that's not possible?
I don't know, Gabe.
Yeah, I know. I think if you're looking at a morning pickup at one location and an afternoon drop off at a different location, that might be easier to accommodate. It's the different schedules on different days that makes it even more complex and more difficult.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I understand that better then.
I know we're really looking at the daycare portion of this whole process too, because I understand, a lot of elementary students are picked up at home, but in the afternoon, parents are working, so they need to go to a daycare. And I know it's difficult, so that's one piece that I think we really. It's hard to make this all work without really knowing. You're right. How many students are going to be on the bus? How many parents are going to bring their children in? And I know information is always changing, as it is every school year. But even more now, definitely. Yeah. So we'll do our best to try to work through it.
Great. Anything else, Gabe, on transportation?
As of right now, that is all I have.
Great. Thank you. Food service, Jared.
Good afternoon. So we are continuing to work through the process of figuring out the multiple aspects of food service. We are developing plans in each of our buildings for feeding the students that are going to be in the buildings on any given day. The building principals have developed plans for how they're going to use a combination, depending on the building, combination of cafeteria space, classroom space, and other spaces, so that they can feed all of the students who will be in the building on a given day while maintaining the 6-foot distancing that's required during meal times. We're still tightening up the exact specifics for each building, but those plans are in development. I would say are well underway. We continue to work with each building principal on developing a plan for how to provide meals to students who are going to want meals on their remote days. The plan that we're developing right now, the current thinking, would not necessitate a separate pickup for meals. What we are really trying to do with our building principals is come up with a plan so that when students who are in cohort A, for example, who are in the buildings on Monday and Tuesday, are going home for their remote portion of the week, that they will be able to bring any meals that they have signed up for with them when they leave that day. So parents won't have to make a separate pickup for meals. That's the goal. We know that we're asking a lot of our families already, and asking them to come to school at a separate time like we did in the spring to pick up food when we were fully remote seems like a lot to ask when their students are going to be coming home anyway. Conversely, those cohort B students who are going to be in the buildings on Thursday and Friday, the current thinking is we'll get their meals to them on Friday afternoon as they're leaving, so they'll have their meals for their remote days at the beginning of the week. I want to say that there's a lot to this for Linda Sargent and her staff to figure out and coordinate, because they're essentially needing to make a week's worth of meals every few days. But we're in the process of figuring that out, and I've met with each of the building principals. Well, that's not true. I've met with half of the building principals up till today. I'm meeting with the last couple tomorrow to talk about what the distribution actually looks like. We know it will look a little different at each grade level. For example, we feel comfortable with high school students at dismissal time going through a line in a pre-planned place, giving their lunch information, collecting their lunches, and taking them whether they are walking, driving home, or taking the bus. We also feel like this is something that may be possible with middle schoolers. With the younger students, we are working on plans for how we can get the meals from having been prepared by the kitchen staff to the students in their classrooms, so it can be packed with their belongings and taken with them. We're not going to require these younger students to have the, be ready to remember that they have to get their lunch and be able to articulate that to the kitchen staff in a way like how many lunches they got. We're going to pre-package those things and make them available and do the best we can to get them directly to those students. we know we're going to have some young students who won't be able to handle necessarily all of the food, and we're working on a plan in each building for how we can get those meals directly into the hands of families. Our very youngest students are usually being signed out directly by parents. So we're going to find a way to make the meals available so that parents can collect their child and collect their meals. We're still working out the actual locations of each of these things, and I've given the building principals a little bit of space to breathe. And now that they kind of know what the picture looks like, they're coming up with some great ideas for how to make this happen using existing staff. The last piece I will say is that we are going to have some remote students who are fully remote, and if they choose to purchase meals, they are going to have that option. And so we're going to be looking at a distribution to those folks. And while the times still have to be worked out so that we're not overwhelming the buildings between students who are leaving at the regular time and parents who are picking up their children, we feel like we're going to try and use those same days, those Tuesdays and Fridays, as pickups, because those are the days that the kitchen staff are going to be already in packaging mode. We also have to remember they need time to make these meals, both for the students in the building and the students who are going to be home. So relying on Linda quite a bit to help get that process streamlined, but we are working on the distribution end as well. We're going to be finishing up with we're going to be putting together a method for families to essentially pre-register and pre-sign up for their meals. We're looking right now at trying to do that on a weekly basis. We think that is something that we can make work. We know that families' food needs may change over the course of the fall, but we feel comfortable that if we can make a form essentially available digitally, where families will be able to access it, put in their student name, the building where they are, and then whether they need 3 meals, 2 meals, 1 meal, we'll be able to get that information to kitchen staff who can prepare those meals and distribute it to the students. It's different. The spring was different than the fall because Linda is now operating under the National School Lunch Program. So in the spring, where we had waivers for the cost of the meals, it was simpler in some ways to prepare meals, knowing that we were going to provide X number of meals for everyone who was on our list. Now, where families who, while we will still be producing meals for families who qualify for free and reduced lunch at the reduced rate, families who do not qualify will be paying the regular prices for the lunches. So as a result, we expect that there may be more fluctuation in the number of meals families request. With the changes in reimbursement, Linda would probably say she wasn't prepared to just make a blanket number of meals for everybody where we don't know that people are going to want all of those meals. And we certainly can't just make a decision for our families to say you're going to take this number of meals. We need to do it according to the wishes of our families. So that's going to require some customization. But if we can, we're going to develop a form that will allow families to click essentially how many meals they need, and then the challenge will be making meals for this student. If they need 3, a different student might want 2. We are going to be developing a plan to push breakfasts out as well. Breakfast will also be charged at the regular rate. So there's going to be the possibility that students may go home with up to 3 lunches and up to 5 breakfasts if they choose to. The survey data that we will collect, that we've discussed, when the new survey goes out, we are asking to include a couple of questions related to food service. At this time, the information that we feel like we really like to have is, given these parameters, given these prices, are you planning on accessing meals or purchasing meals for your student on their remote days? We're going to ask them if they're planning on purchasing lunches, and we're going to ask them if they're planning on purchasing breakfasts. We see those kind of as two separate items in a way, and we're hoping that this information will give us a better sense of what kind of volume or what kind of work we're looking at here. Certainly, we're going to provide meals to the families that that request them, but you know the volume of meals going out, coupled with the volume of meals being prepared in the building, is going to really be a determining factor in what this process ultimately looks like. So that's my update right now, and I'm happy to answer any questions you folks may have to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Jared. And keeping in mind a couple of, or a number of our elementary buildings, they only have 2 staff members, and they don't necessarily work 8 hours a day each. You know, they're maybe 5 hours a day. So it's a lot to ask 2 people to do in a very short period of time. Any questions for Jared? No? Jared, thank you. That was a comprehensive review. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Nate, do you have any additional update on athletics?
No additional update on the world of athletics, just a few things. We did discuss as a committee last meeting your recommendation, Pat, to open up the tennis courts. And we decided as a committee that would be a good idea to publicly open the tennis courts. We know people have been using them throughout the summer anyway, but now we can just officially open them. The other question we had is you and I had talked about the survey question. So we talked about that in our last committee meeting and wondering where we were in that process and if who's going to send that out if we do send it out.
So do you want to elaborate a little bit more, because no one knows what you mean by a survey question or what that's about?
So there was a parent that recommended that we possibly put together a survey going out to parents of athletes. And so Pat and I had talked last week about crafting some sort of survey. It would be a 1-question survey, and essentially the way it's worded is if the main principal association allows us to have fall sports and we follow the guidelines set forth by the NPA and NFHS in Maine General, would you allow your son or daughter to participate in fall athletics? And it was a yes or no question. And so we're kind of looking to see where we are in that process and who's going to send it out, and if so, when, and so on and so forth.
If it is sent out, it's sent out by you and your committee in that regard, although I don't want to overburden parents with too many surveys. And we do have another survey going out this week, Angela, correct? So maybe we want to think about it, to think about adding it to that particular survey. And the purpose of the survey was for the high school to gather kind of information to know how many, if we're going to have teams and we're going to continue with our athletics throughout the course of the fall, it's understanding exactly how many students are going to participate, and that information could be shared with the board. There was a lot of conversation about whether athletics should continue if we have 14-foot, if PE requires a minimum of 14 feet outside of distancing in order to be safe. How does that really apply to athletics? And so the question was just being asked in terms of safety by the board. And so the survey was a follow-up question to that. Right now, we don't even know how many families intend to have their children participate. So we thought it would be a good piece of information to collect. Okay, Angela's encouraging a separate survey, but just being cautious about the timing. I wonder, Nate, if we're expecting the MPA to put something out this week,
Mhm.
does it make sense to just wait and see what the MPA says?
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, because if they say no, well,
Right.
then we don't need to survey parents.
Right.
Right, there's no point.
Yeah.
And if they say yes, then we can talk about putting it out next week. And you still have like 2 weeks before the season actually begins. So it's an adequate amount of time to provide you with the feedback that you need to know.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Okay, Mary?
And so, Nate, you said you would send it out to the parents of the athletes. Do we know who all the fall athletes would be? Normally, we have kids sign up ahead of time,
Yeah, so
especially our freshmen in particular, because they haven't been in the school.
so I sent out signups last week. Typically what we do is we have signups for fall sports in the spring, and we put sign-up sheets on the wall in the office. Well, obviously, we didn't have that this spring. So I sent them out electronically to all the classes, class of 24, 23, 22, and 21. So those went out on Thursday, and we then from that we can compile a list of emails, and then Christina also has that information on file in the front office.
Okay.
Great.
And
Anything else, Nate? I'm sorry, Angela, go ahead.
I just want to clarify the rationale for a separate survey. I think that it would allow Nate and his team to be more nimble if they're able to have their own 6 through 12 survey based on that data he already has. He'll be able to see that data come in real time and be able to be more responsive. If it goes through the broader survey, it's a harder process for him to have to filter through the other questions we're asking. And it's a potentially broader audience, and it may get lost in all the other questions being asked. And it seems like this is a very targeted survey with a very specific purpose for a smaller audience. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was clear what my rationale was for that recommendation.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it. All right. Anything else, Nate?
That is it from athletics. Oh,
okay. Great.
Last committee meetings, I just want to add this too. Just because we have no further guidance and we really have no idea at this point what's happening, and there are a lot of people on the committee that are on vacation this week, I'm about to have a meeting this week, and we won't have a meeting until we hear a recommendation from the MPA.
Okay, great. Thank you for letting us know.
You're welcome.
Okay, then let's move on to communication. Katie.
Okay. Well, you know that last week we helped Pat get the superintendent's message out regarding the back to school plan. So that was posted last Tuesday. We have a current project that we'd like your approval for. And I think along the same lines of some other committees getting a little bit of flexibility around what gets, what moves forward without needing to wait for a Monday meeting. I wonder if there might be some flexibility there for communication, just understanding the time sensitive nature of needing to get things posted. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a project that has been completed and we'd like to get it posted. If somebody could just, I can't see everyone, so if you could just tell me if you can see this. It says more information in the near future.
We can see this.
Yeah. I'm going to play a little audio recording and hope that you can hear it. All right. Are you hearing anything?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you the nuts and bolts of this. It is Nick Bucci from the high school provided the audio. Basically, what we want people to know is that we are working, and we completely recognize that our community is waiting for information regarding some of the things that we haven't been able to post yet. Like, what days of the week will my child be coming to school? Transportation routes are being worked out right now. We're going to get those to everybody as soon as they are established. The student handbook is soon to be released. It's being finalized. Again, same with cohort assignments. We just what we want to do is we want to acknowledge and assure the community that these are the projects in motion right now. It's just taking some time, but we're going to get you that information. So that, I'm going to just stop presenting here. That is not doing much justice to Nick's voiceover of that slide, but that is what we would like to provide. There's nothing all that outrageous. Yeah, Angela, we stuck specifically with cohort assignments because we thought that teacher assignments was really an elementary-based sort of urgent need. You know, families and students really want to know who their teacher is, and it just looks different in other buildings. We wanted this to be able to be a universal message. So again, I know I didn't do that much justice, but if with your permission, we'd like to get that posted tomorrow as a non-essential but timely update. Okay.
Thumbs up. Yes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We did complete a hand washing video. It's still being edited. We did that over at Pittston Randolph Consolidated School. We used the CDC guidelines around what hand washing needs to look like and when it needs to happen. Remember that we're required to do that training for students and staff. And so that's sort of a first phase. Denise, this is off my script, but Denise and I had talked a little bit, and some of the elementary principals and I have talked last week and this week about just keeping a list of some of the information that our school nurses across buildings can send out to families, things like hand washing, recommendations for taking care of your mask so that we're staying healthy while we're putting these safety measures in place. And I think hand washing can be one of those topics that we just want to we want to provide the training and then consistently cycle through some of these requirements because they're best, you know, they're safe and they're best practice for all of us, in addition to being required training. We got our frequently asked questions page posted and know that we'll have a lot more to add to that as we can be more consistent with our answers and definite. Tomorrow, we're filming a bus video. We're going to focus on boarding and exiting the bus safely. We're planning for this to be released the week before school starts. We're also going to plan for filming tomorrow a possible second video highlighting safety features of the bus. When just listening to your update, Gabe, that might need some tweaking, that we might need to revise our thinking. But that can happen in the moment. Tomorrow, we've got a group of communications committee members and some special guests who are coming out to see you in the morning. I'm imagining that's on your radar. Good. Yep, you're nodding. Okay.
Yes, it is. So I've already talked to Charles, and we're going to try to do some prep work right off in the morning to one of the buses to put some X's like I talked about, get a hand sanitizer device set up in the bus just to do some of those things. So the video looks a little more what it's going to look like when they actually start school.
That's great. Great to hear that. And then the last thing that I have, and I'm open to any questions that you might have or needs that you might feel need to be communicated at this point, but the slogan that I showed you all last week, the sort of we want to really promote that in Tiger territory we're safe and we wear masks. The subcommittee that's spearheading that effort has sort of revised their thinking, and they'd like to have a contest among students in different schools and have a winner, a school-based winner at each school. I sent out an email just earlier today and have heard back from just one principal. They're super, super busy. So I do expect to hear back, but I didn't expect to hear by 4 o'clock today. And that principal was in support as long as there's sort of a final judgment on the appropriate slogan that is deemed the winner. I'd like for that subcommittee to be able to roll with that idea that there's this contest for a slogan and an image that goes along with it, and then we can incorporate that signage throughout each of those buildings. So open to your thoughts there, hoping that that makes sense. And that's all I had for a communications update.
Katie, my question is, when would that happen? Once school opens and students were in session?
I actually didn't even respond with that question, Pat, so I'll find out. We meet again Wednesday morning, and I would guess that if we can promote it now, it's very likely that that wouldn't be incorporated into our messaging until the start of school, once students and staff are back.
Okay.
So I apologize that I can't answer that for you. Do you have thoughts either way about that and just feeling a need to get it out a little sooner maybe and incorporate it? Or
No, my question kind of centers around that student handbook. There was a recommendation that we put our new logo on the front page of the student handbook. And so that's why I was asking if we're releasing the handbook within the next couple days to families, then we'll have to go with the photo or the picture that we currently have, or find another one and hold off adding the logo
right.
until
Well,
a later date.
the other thing
Okay.
would be the other thought, just to add to that, is then we would have essentially different slogans and logos in each building, which does have a certain appeal, but I also like the idea of a unified, like one very recognizable system logo and slogan. What are others' thoughts? Recognizing that it's 20 minutes of 6 and we've got more to get to. Mary?
Can you use the tiger with the face mask that's on the staff handbook, Pat, for the student one?
I absolutely could. We just thought we'd do something a little different. And the photo here is of a student, of a young boy with a mask on his face. But I could use the tiger with a mask. Katie, we can talk. It was just a question that I had.
Okay.
It's certainly not critical that logo be placed on this handbook for the time being. So
yeah, and I, like someone else said, love the student engagement and the sort of buy-in.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give the subcommittee permission to run with this idea and give you an update next week.
Perfect. Yes.
Okay. Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Katie. All right, then we have an update from Angela for instruction, SEL, and technology.
Hi. Yes. So two things. The first thing is, as soon as I find it here, I have it queued up. It's just, here it is. One of our subcommittees created our expectations for learning. That then we compared all of these expectations to the handbooks. We don't think there are any conflicts. We think they're in support. And we also had the administrative team review these. So that's where we've gotten feedback. What we'd like to do is share this briefly with you and clarify its purpose. And then if we're comfortable with this, it would be added to the learning plan section of our MSAD11 return to school planning website, possibly added into the student handbook, and part of the principal's dialogue with families on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so the top of this is just a reminder, we're in 3 different zones, and these expectations for learning really work across any of these zones. And then it's 3 layers. What are the expectations on educators, students, and families? And again, I want to be really clear that this is not, there's no insinuation that people aren't doing these things or weren't doing these things. It's just ensuring that we are very clear in what our expectations are, and through clarity, we can kind of come together in a unified way. And so this is just discussing that instruction will be new instruction. We're not just going to practice for like the spring felt like in some of our grade spans. That we have a learning platform, and then features of feedback, availability, communication, presentation, and then that rings true for students as well. Active participation and attendance, your learning space, and how to be prepared as a learner and present yourself as a learner and communicate in your learning community. and then families that with a distinct message that we understand that this is unusual, and that we know that you're going to do the best you can to support your child, and that, just again, support your child with developing routines and practices, and creating a safe space for learning, and then engage in communication and keep yourself up to date by monitoring the messages the school sends out and includes on the return to school planning website or the school's website. In a lot of the information our committee has reviewed around best practices for schools that have already engaged in back to school work, or have studied the work of the spring, it was noted that when there are clear expectations like this laid out, there's an opportunity for greater dialogue and reduced confusion. So this is just something we wanted to bring to your attention and see if there's any concerns or questions that are raised when you see a document like this.
Questions or comments? Angela, I personally think that it should be included in the student handbook. I think the more we can create one comprehensive document for families, the easier it will be for them.
I agree. I mean, I think it would be great if it could be in the student handbook. I also think it'll be a document that may need to be extracted and used, like in dialogue with families, in order, because you can get overwhelmed with just reading the whole student handbook in its entirety, but I think having it included would be really beneficial. Are there any other questions or concerns? We did really try to go through the handbooks and make sure that the language didn't interfere with anything that we had outlined in those resources.
Angela, I appreciated that you said a lot of these things were already happen or would be happening, because it does at a glance, it is overwhelming to a staff who is going to be consuming so much information and trying to align all of the expectations to practices, and in the same, to an extent to families, certainly, and students. So I appreciate that. I like that it's all right there and it's concise, and I think, like you, it belongs in the handbook.
I want to thank Alicia and the remote team for getting this off the ground. They really did a bulk of the work, and then we all surrounded her and tried to refine it, and the administrative team reviewed it as well. So appreciate that. Great. The next thing, hang on, stop presenting. Is nothing to be presented, but it is to discuss. It was referenced already in this meeting that we would have a follow-up survey for families. So the process is this, that we use the survey that we had earlier this month from families to help us refine our back to school plans and estimate our ability to move forward in green, yellow, or red. It became very clear that for us to move forward, we needed to move into the yellow zone. That's our ability to transport, serve meals, have adequate learning conditions for our students moving forward at this moment in time. And so that data was immensely helpful. Now that we've started to become clear about the learning plan, the principals are hosting virtual meetings Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on the building, so that families and the Office of Special Services is also doing that, so that families can connect with their principal or director and learn about more of the details behind learning in a hybrid environment. And then after that, Thursday morning or shortly thereafter the meetings, we would like to be able to send out what we're calling an enrollment survey. So there's a difference. This is where we now say, okay, you have a lot more information. We are just over 2 weeks out from the start of the school year. We are now asking you to make a commitment. There would be a deadline on that survey, and parents would say, my child, and they would enroll each child. this child will be attending remote learning option, or this child will attend the hybrid learning option, understanding that the school will assign a cohort. And then the third option will be, just for clarity's sake, I am opting to have my child attend a different school and or register my child for homeschooling through the Department of Education. Just because I want to make clear that if they're not, we want to be cautious about, we have to make sure we know our kids are engaged in learning somewhere if they're in our district. Some child find stuff going on and stuff like that. So I want to be really cautious about that. It seems to me from tonight's conversation that survey would also need to have 2 other features, which I can follow up after the meeting, but I just want to confirm that this is true. One feature would be related to food services, and that would be if you are enrolling in remote or hybrid, do you plan on utilizing the food service program? If remotely, the frequency, and if hybrid, the frequency. We'll have to work on the language on that in the next 24 hours.
I can help you with the language.
If you have some suggestions, that would be great. And then the second feature on the survey, in addition to the food service and the learning plan, is transportation. So if you want, we did survey transportation initially, and that gave us a gauge as in terms of our readiness. But with transportation, Gabe, I'm going to need a little bit more clarity about exactly what you need to know so that we can kind of verify when you put the cohorts into the transportation system that this will work and that you have some verifiable data from families that what we anticipate their children doing is accurate. And so Karen wrote daycare. That might be part of our actual transportation question. And Gabe, I need some support as to exactly how you want to word it, because I want to make sure that you get the information that you need for us to be successful with our families. So those are the 3 features I think that would show up on the enrollment survey: the learning plan, the transportation plan in detail, and the food service plan. And Jared, we'll have to have a little bit of information about the pay rate on the food service as an orientation for families.
Yep, absolutely. I just sent you a couple of questions that Linda and I had kind of fleshed out earlier today, and we have to get the final numbers, but the price will be in the question.
Great. So I guess the one is, are there any concerns that are raised by this? 2 is, if we send it out Thursday, I think we actually have to ask for it back by Monday. Like time is really of the essence here. If we wait much longer than that, I'm concerned that on our end, we're not going to be able to meet the needs the families are asking, and the clock is ticking for them. Mary?
So Angela, I guess I'm thinking, I know I understand that there's a possibility or a probability that we will go green. So when your remote question is there, should it say I choose to go remote with the probability or a possibility that it will be green at some point in time? And not make them, if they haven't been following along, they may think they can stay remote when the school's going green.
They actually are enrolling.
I say remote, hybrid, I mean, sorry.
Oh, okay, let's start
about the hybrid. Yeah, so right now, if they choose hybrid, do they truly understand that at some point in time we may go green and the hybrid piece will go away?
I see what you're saying.
So should the question say, I choose to go with the hybrid model, understanding that we may go green at some point in time and they would be in school full time?
Or that we may go red at some point.
Or we may go red and everybody would be remote.
I think we're just going to have an opening that says, this is an enrollment survey for the start of year. If you have
Okay.
questions about our ability to change our color zone, go to our return to school planning website. I mean, maybe I can add a little language in there, Mary, because I do appreciate that, like being cognizant of the flexibility, but I also want to be really careful about confusing families when what
Yeah,
we're
I know.
where are you showing up on September 8th?
Yeah. Okay.
But let me mess around with that a little bit. Maybe I'll send you a draft just to see if I can get your feedback on it.
Other questions for Angela? Molly?
I don't know that it's for Angela, but it's maybe just in general because it may not be able to answer it, but we're asking them to enroll without knowing a cohort assignment, which shouldn't impact a family's decision one way or the other, but when are they going to receive a cohort assignment? What's the timing on that? And I know we're trying to, communications is saying it's coming soon, but I think an enrollment survey is important, but I also don't know what kind of response you're going to get from parents and families if they're frustrated that they still don't have enough information. And that's not knowing what the principals are going to be sharing prior to that survey. Maybe it will be enough information, but I know a lot of parents are saying, we had to do this survey and we didn't have any information. And I was trying, well, we've had a website that was trying to provide that information, but if they don't know to be looking for it, if they don't attend the principal, they may still not answer the enrollment survey the way we need them to. So
I
I'm
totally
not saying there's no purpose to it. I'm just, it's not
way
an attendance list, is it? I mean,
well, the other way to look at this, Molly, is without their enrollment, we can't finalize the cohort because some of those kids are currently estimated as remote and they may actually show up to school. And some of the kids who say they're showing up to school that are impacting our cohort A versus our cohort B numbers might end up choosing remote. And so, like, I totally see what you're saying from the family side of things, and especially like wanting to receive concrete information from us, and wondering why it's taking so long, even though it's like a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week process that everyone's going through. I don't know how to, I don't know, I'll let others speak to it. I don't really know how to deal with that situation effectively.
Should the cohort be assigned whether they're attending in person this term or not? Because we're giving them the option to change their mind per term. So that was my question before on whether or not, if they're given the option to change, if we're green come term 2, they should be fit into a cohort already, should they not?
Except there's some daycare issues that might change which cohort they go into, and their daycare may change if they decide to start going back to school. I mean, I guess you're right to some degree.
Are we planning for that now? Like, I know it's, I'm sorry.
I don't have an answer. I would look to Karen or Katie, who've been involved with all of their peers. The administrators have been meeting on a very regular basis. They are trying to look at creating cohorts across the district to take families' needs into consideration. And I'm not sure if maybe based on a conversation I know you even had today, looking at those cohorts, if there's anything that you can add to Molly's question.
I would just say, Molly, that it's so, I mean, you are asking the $1 million question, and it really is a chicken egg conundrum to be able to move forward. About assigning cohorts, I mean, we certainly have, at our school, we have about 80 like unknown question marks, right? Families who indicated they didn't know what they were going to do, or they didn't respond to the survey. So those students are on class lists. We don't want to not plan for them and are assigned to cohorts. If we go green, kids who opted for remote don't necessarily need to be in a cohort because we're no longer working in cohorts. But we would have the launching point. We would have our current cohorts as a launching point. And then we would want to maintain, if we continue in cohort, maintain some balance in between A and B for students who come back. If we're in the green, then we certainly always want to be ready with cohorts built. But it's such a layered process, and trying to get all of our kids identified and assigned to cohorts, and then match siblings in the building, and then match siblings in other buildings, and then pull our information from the middle school and the high school, and then look at daycares. So I really do understand the urgency, and 90% of the conversations, emails and phone calls that I'm getting are just like, could you please give me information? I need to tell work what my schedule can be. It's just a complex, layered information to get at. So Karen, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I'm just going to add that we also have to look at their services. So we have students who are in SpurWink, OT, PT, speech, Title I. So and then trying to build some balanced classrooms, not knowing, which students are coming in cohort A and which ones are coming in cohort B. So that survey really needs to get out there again, that enrollment one, so that we know for sure who is really going to send their children back, so that when we make these classes, I have balanced numbers, and we do the best we can to balance the needs in these classrooms too. Because when we do go green, should we be able to do that, soon, when they come back, you don't have unbalanced classrooms. I don't want to have a classroom of 20 students in another classroom of 10. So, and then the same thing with all of the student needs. I don't want to overload somebody. We're trying to do it very thoughtfully. So the high school and the middle school right now have finished doing their cohorts. And some of us are now meeting with other schools. Like I meet with Riverview tomorrow to see where my students align with siblings at her school. I'm working again on, daycares. Daycares have been calling and asking for certain cohorts. Parents are asking for certain cohorts. So trying to stay up on top of all of that, and, trying to meet everybody's needs, doing the, just the best we can at this point. And really, I would love to be able to say we would have cohorts this week, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think when we were talking today, Katie, we were looking at possibly early next week that we could actually put something out.
And I would encourage anyone who's watching, I would really encourage parents to participate in the virtual meeting that's going to be held tomorrow or Wednesday with their child's principal or with the special ed department, that they will receive a lot more additional information by attending those meetings. And Katie, can you remind us to how was that communication sent out to parents to make them aware of the meetings that are occurring?
Yep, that was sent out in an alert on Friday, and I actually was just going to try to find it and post it in the chat here, with the caveat that I think the high school is going to need to change their time to work around the CAC informational meeting for families.
Okay. Okay. Molly, great question.
Yeah,
Sorry, we can't offer something more definitive.
I get the perspective. I just am so appreciative of how much effort is going in on the administrative side to try to make sure we're being as responsive as possible to every single need that's coming to us and every request that they can possibly handle. And I recognize that the only way forward for families is to trust us, and that's a challenge when they're trying to get information in order to plan their lives. Yellow, while it's the learning model we really need to move forward with in order to follow all the 6 safety guidelines and measures, it is the most difficult model in terms of setting up the school environment. Red and green are the easier setting up the school environment models, but we are just not in the position to move forward. We would like to avoid red as much as possible, and we're just not yet in the position to move forward in green. And so it's not like we've held off on trying to gather this information. It's just so time consuming, and more every day we're getting more information from families that the principals are just so dedicated to trying to meet these families' needs that it takes that much longer to revise the lists over and over. And then and we've said this before, but we also really want to try to run this through Traversa, which is our transportation system, to make sure whatever we're putting out there in cohorts, we can actually get the kids to school and back wherever they need to go. And Gabe expressed last week that takes a little bit of time too. And which is partly why we were thinking we really need to have the family commitment. So then we can look at those little nuanced details about their before and after school plans. And that's where it gets tricky, because families are going to say, well, I can't really give you that information until I know which cohort I'm in. And
Yeah, I really don't.
And then changing them is going to be even more challenging.
I don't want it to sound like the appreciation isn't there and is not recognized for all of the admin and the principals doing that work. It's just, are these parents going to be held to this enrollment survey decision, or in the coming 2 weeks, do they have the flexibility to change their mind? If they don't enroll now, are they enrolling in a virtual academy or another option? Because are they not being put in a cohort?
And we talked about that at our A team again today, that I think we're looking at more to, they're going to be in a cohort. We'll just have to assign them, because I don't want to have a student expected to be remote and they're out waiting for the bus. So I would rather plan for them in person. Right, Gabe? I mean, I would rather plan for them in person and be able to say, okay, well, this is the cohort you're in. You'll have to come in on Thursday. Today's not your bus day. Than not to have planned for them at all and then be in trouble for unbalanced classrooms too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Karen. We need to make sure that we have there's a place for them. So if they don't respond to the survey, or we're not sure, we have to have a place for them in the school. I think we need.
I guess that was my question.
Yeah.
That was kind of what I was getting at earlier, was because Veronica's right. There's no need for a cohort if we go green. But if someone changes their mind and needs to be in a cohort, are they planned on in a cohort? And can we make that announcement before doing this enrollment survey? Or are we still going to need to do another process to enroll? I know the information is going to be so useful and needed. I recognize both sides of it.
So it sounds like to me, from what I'm hearing, and I do recall this email coming in this morning now, this is an opportunity for parents to give us as much possible hard information as they can. We are going to enroll every child that says they're going to be in hybrid into a cohort, and every child we don't hear from. And if you opt for remote option and that's what you want to opt for, please, please, please fill out the survey, especially. And if you know you're going to register as a homeschooled family or enroll in another school, then it is in everyone's best interest to register that in this enrollment survey as well. So we're not looking for you and making sure you're okay. Every child is okay. I guess that's getting to maybe some of the resolution, Molly. Is our default will be we will assign them to a cohort, but the more information a family can give us, the better off we will all be in this partnership.
I think, just to add and then move on, we need the responses to be able to finalize, and the reality is that we're going to spend time calling families, those families that we don't hear from, which takes manpower and hours and just prolongs the process of finalizing our lists. So another piece.
Right, and those elementary families, if we're trying to assign classroom teachers as well, the more we spend making phone calls to families who aren't answering the survey, the longer it will take us to get that out. It's true. That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Okay, we're around 6:10 here. Mary?
How are parents going to know when all of that's said and done? How are parents going to know what cohorts they're going to be in, their children will be in? Has that been discussed?
Yeah, so everything's getting pushed into PowerSchool, so there can be letters, right? Terry, can you speak to those letters? There are letters already. Jared did a good job designing the letters and then worked with Terry in PowerSchool to set it up. Can you talk to that?
That would be important for Katie's group to get out to parents too. Yep.
Great. So be on the lookout for an enrollment survey.
All right. Thank you all. It's a good conversation, important conversation for us to have. All right, that brings us to the end. We've already covered the staff handbook that went out last Thursday. The student handbook will go out shortly, and the building principal and special ed meetings take place tomorrow and Wednesday. So we will be back here next Monday at 4 o'clock.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everyone.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Pat, I wanted
Bye.
a few minutes when everybody's gone.
Yes.